Welcome to a Life Stuff 101 podcast, dedicated to sharing stories and insights to inspire you to always make your mental and emotional wellness a top priority. Today, we're bringing you a Life Stuff 101 snackable episode, where we feature a tip or a quick bite-sized nutrition-packed mental wellness treat. Our discussion today is for general information purposes and not meant to be specific advice. For personalized support and specific answers to questions you may have, please consult the appropriate medical or mental health care professional. Now, here's your host, who's on this wild adventure ride of life just like you. And as far as real life snacks go, she definitely prefers sweet to salty. Mental wellness coach and psychotherapist Mia Yokoi.
Hello and welcome to another Life Stuff 101 snackable episode. Today I'll be talking about one of my favorite subjects, that is the differences between introverts and extroverts. If you'd listened to my previous snackable episode, you'll know that I have been contributing to a weekly segment on a local radio program called The Spin, hosted by Barry Davis and Michelle Storino. Let me actually just take this moment because I'd like to give them some much deserved recognition. I'm incredibly grateful to Barry Davis, who's provided me with the experience and space to regularly contribute to his broadcast, but also his generosity in allowing me to utilize those contributions for this podcast. Also, Michelle Storino, his co-host, who's been so incredibly kind and supportive of me, who's a complete rookie, dealing and to be working with two professionals has actually been such a learning for me. So I'm so appreciative. And they've both been so patient with me. So I'm super thankful for them both. And I hope to have them both as guests at some point soon for the podcast. To the episode for today. We spoke about the differences between introverts and extroverts on The Spin for a Wellness Wednesday segment. And this is one of my earlier segments from earlier this year, 2019. I personally identify not just as an introvert, but I actually identify as an extremely shy, extreme introvert. And so it was fun speaking with Michelle and Barry, who identify as extroverts, even though I do have some suspicions that Michelle may have some tendencies toward introversion, and hopefully I'll have a chance to talk to her more about that on a future episode. At any rate, listen now on that conversation the three of us had.
Explain to us off the bat about where we all fall, because this is not, like I said, just one or the other, is it?
Right. It is on a spectrum. And I think it's important to also clarify that it's a personality trait. By that, it's, I guess we could look at it more of the nature part of who we are as individuals, as opposed in the sort of the nature versus nurture sort of influences. And we all do fall somewhere on the spectrum between more of an extrovert or an introvert, but we can also move either way, really, based on where we are in our lives or what's going on. But there is generally a tendency toward more one way or the other. But I think it's important to note that there are personality traits, and traits are something that are innately true of who we are. And the difference and the ways that I think about extroversion and introversion is the same ways that it's measured by the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or the MBTI, that a lot of people know through work and so forth. And from a psychological standpoint, there's something called the Big Five personality traits, which is a personality model.
Any chance you can go through those for us too and elaborate just a little bit on those?
So the Big Five personality traits was developed by somebody, he's a psychologist named Lewis Goldberg, and it is generally accepted as a model to understand personality types. And so the Big Five, to understand personality and gain insights into yourself and other people. So one is definitely the extroversion, the difference between extroverts and introverts. Second is agreeableness. The third is openness. 4 is conscientiousness. And 5 is neuroticism.
And that's the weird thing, that we can have a little bit of many of those different traits in us, Mio. I have a friend, and actually I have a few friends that I know that are professional musicians or actors, and when you take them away from their work, they are the most introverted, shy, quiet type of people. But then when they go on stage, things change and a lot of them take on a persona of I'm no longer me, I'm now portraying this character. Is that a way that many of us can escape something like being introverted by just putting it into our mind that I'm not being me now?
I think everybody is different in terms of how they manage their personality trait, and particularly around introverts. Being introverted doesn't necessarily mean that people are shy. They are two different things. And it could be that people who are performers enjoy performing and being seen and expressing their creativity that way. But it could be that their introverted needs is that where they gain their energy back or to feel better in terms of energy is to do it alone as opposed to doing it socially.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, what about, I guess, what are the differences in terms of an introvert and extrovert? Like, what are the main differences? I think a lot of people just assume extroverts are just loud people and introverts are quiet people, but I'm sure that can't be just the case.
Right. The big difference is how the individual, fills up in terms of energy or refuels from an energy perspective. So extroverts generally get energy from being social and being around others, while introverts refuel by solitary time and generally away from people. Or another way of putting it is that there's more of a tendency for extroverts to be about the outside world as opposed to introverts who are more about the inner world.
I hope that gave you some insights about the differences between extroverts and introverts. Also, I realized that there is a bit of a dangling thread where we touched on the Big Five personality model in that clip. And on another Wellness Wednesday that was recorded after the one that you just heard, we did do an entire segment about the Big Five personality model. So I'll be sure to have that as a future Snackables episode. And a really huge thanks once again to Barry Davis and Michelle Storino. If you'd like to learn more about the work that they do on The Spin, there is information at nsrmedia.ca. That's nsrmedia.ca. And I will be featuring more of my contributions to The Spin with Michelle and Barry in future Snackable episodes. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. As I mentioned earlier, the differences between introverts and extroverts is one of my favorite topics. So if this is something you'd like to hear more about, please do let me know by reaching out to me at my website at solidwellness.org, Twitter, or Instagram. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe to be notified of upcoming episodes. Thanks so much for listening today, and have a great rest of the day or evening, wherever you are in the world. Speak to you again real soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Life Stuff 101. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you'll be among the first to be notified when new episodes are released. Always be sure to check out lifestuff101.com for show notes and to be a member of Mio's Miracle Mob. Because as the wise modern-day philosopher John Bon Jovi once said, miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you.